Welcome to the fifth lesson of the course Investing in Regenerative Agriculture and Food, how to put money to work in regenerating soils and ecosystems at scale and growing a lot of tasty food while doing it. We'll make sure to create a PDF of every single lesson so you can find all the links and all the slides afterwards. Check in the links below for that. This lesson will look at the impact side of things. So we'll look at what positive impact or net positive impact we're trying to have within the why would you invest or why would you put money to work in regenerative agriculture and food. What is it not? This is not investment advice. Seek financial professional advice before making any investment. So let's get to the why invest. This is part of a 3-4 series where we're looking at why would you invest in regenerative agriculture. We've looked at the risks, the risks of extractive, degenerative agriculture, and we're now we've looked at the opportunities, and we're now looking at the impact. As I think all investors, but predominantly impact investors, are looking for a net positive impact. Impact investors obviously are looking for social and environmental impact besides financial return. But I would argue that if you're listening to this, if you're interested in regenerative agriculture, you're looking for a deeper positive net impact. All investments have a negative impact as well. We should always take that into account. It takes energy to produce solar panels. It takes energy to do anything. It takes sometimes social costs to do certain things. So we're looking for the highest net positive, always taking into account in consideration also the negative impact of our movements and our investments. So we'll be looking at the impact side of things. The impact on people, ecosystems, and biodiversity. And let's just start with the potential. The potential is absolutely enormous. That comes with a big caveat, is that the unknowns are absolutely enormous as well. And I want to invite you to be ready for some weirdness, maybe. Be ready for, I'm going to show you some examples that might sound too good to be true. And in some cases they might be, but be ready for the enormous potential of regenerative agriculture and food. If you dive deeper into this space, you're going to see and find people that are really able to do very interesting things, to really facilitate more life, take a degraded piece of land and in 10 years, turn it around to something that is absolutely full of life. Seem things that might not be possible. But I want you to open up to that and see the potential. A lot of things might be noise, might be not true, but there's so many unknowns into the places where we're going to travel next. So just to keep it very simple, we're going to look at 4 pieces: carbon storage, water storage, biodiversity, and health. And these come from the paper, The Investment Case for Ecological Farming of Paul McMahon. And just to give you just a taste of what is possible in this space. So to look at carbon, the reason why I originally got very, very interested in this space is actually a quote and actually a presentation of Tony Laloux. If you increase the organic matter by a full 1%, you sequester roughly in the soil, you sequester roughly 100 tons of CO2 per hectare. There's a lot of discussion on this number. There's a lot of discussion of how much of the CO2 stays in the soil, how long it stays, how stable it is, how deep it goes, how fast it goes. It's safe to say that the potential, I think we come back to the central theme here, potential is enormous, probably much bigger than we expect. We've mostly been counting, for instance, in forestry, the carbon in the trees, into the biomass, but we don't know. There's the potential is enormous and the unknowns are enormous as well. But just safe to say that for many people, one of the primary reasons they're in the space or they got into the space is the carbon side. Water. So climate change, I've done a very interesting interview. By the way, I've interviewed Tony Laloux twice, and I will link those interviews. You can find them on the website. I will link them below. Climate change is a symbol, looking at water, climate change is a symbol of the water cycle disturbance, and we can fix it. Already the framing is very interesting because we've been only focusing on climate change so far, mostly. And Zach Weiss here, who I interviewed as well, who's doing amazing work in terms of distributed water, work on farms and landscapes, is that actually climate change is a symptom of a much bigger issue, which is the water cycle disturbance. We can argue on that if that's true or not. There's a lot of interesting research coming out there and a lot of interesting work being done. But I want you to open up to that and see if maybe the story is actually a lot bigger than climate change. Biodiversity. This is a very full slide, but I just want you to see the sheer size. So if you have an acre of healthy soil, which is about 0.4 hectares, it's estimated currently, and this is currently constantly being adjusted, that there are about 400 kilos of earthworms, 1,000 kilos of fungi, 680 kilos of bacteria, 60 kilos of protozoa, and another 400 kilos of arthropods and algae. And this is only the stuff we currently know, because 1 gram of soil may contain over 1 billion bacteria, and we only have names for 5%. So coming back to the enormous potential, there's another 95 to discover, to see what they do together, to understand how they make a tree grow, how they facilitate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We still literally only scratch the surface. And then on the health side, and here I would like to quote Zach Bush, which I think touches upon something very, very, very interesting, the microbiome. It is for a good reason that we're saying my gut feeling, or think with your gut, or etc. Because we're starting to discover that the microbiome, which lives in your gut, is probably the foundation of human life, health, and also human consciousness. It's really your second brain. And there's a very intimate relationship between your microbiome and the soil microbiome, which we until recently didn't know too much about as well. So there's a very interesting relationship between, and we're going to look into that later in another video, healthy soil, healthy produce, healthy gut system, and healthy people, and thus healthy ecosystems. So this might sound completely ridiculous from a medical mindset, but it might be true. And maybe we're going to discover a lot of things about health and soil and food that we sort of knew or imagined, but we never really had the data for. And just to finish off this impact part with a few slides that are a bit more visual, just to show you the potential. This is a place in Portugal, which in 3 years, with a lot of water works like Zach is doing, not that he did this project, but the work Zach Weiss is doing, who mentioned the water cycle disturbance, turned into an enormously interesting, very green, obviously not taking in the same period in the year, very green space. And once you start diving into the regenerative ag and food space, you're going to see a lot of these before after pictures, or very famously the fence line picture. So you see a fence in this case, and you see it going away into the distance. And on the left side, this is obviously the same type of soil, the same rain, the same climate, the same conditions, same weather, etc. The only thing that's different is management. And you can imagine as an investor or as a farmer, which place you would like to run or to invest in or to be part of, or even to be. I would definitely choose the more green part, which is much more full of life. So I would like you to imagine in this impact piece, what if we are able to take the farming and food system we currently have, which is much more part of the problem than part of the solution. But what if we could regenerate soil, which we actually have proven? I mean, there are millions of farmers around the world, or tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands that have been doing this consistently over the last decades. And every day there are more. What if we could regenerate people? We're starting to see more and more data coming out of this connection, healthy soil, healthy produce, healthy gut, and healthy people. What if we could actually regenerate communities? I'm starting to see that for many, many places, and maybe even the majority of places, if agriculture doesn't work, and it currently doesn't work, most farmers are not making any money. If agriculture doesn't work, the countryside doesn't work. And if the countryside doesn't work, cities probably won't work either. So I don't understand, but I can see a growing in interest, but I don't understand why we're not having that discussion. Why are rural populations degrading, literally? Their soil, but also their communities. Banks are closing, hospitals are closing, supermarkets, schools. People are moving to the cities for many different reasons. But I think one of those reasons is that agriculture is failing. It's not giving the economic return, the impact return that we're looking for. So we move to cities. And what if we could regenerate whole ecosystems? So to really go from a few hectares here, a few acres there, to full watersheds. If we could bring back this river that you can see that used to be much bigger, if we can really think at watershed level, bioregional level, and bring even, and this may sound really weird, but even bring the climate and the local climate much more in balance, or stabilize it, thinking about bioregions, ecosystems, and watersheds. This is the level of dreaming and the level of practicality we need to look at, because most of our land is degraded. If you want to dig deeper, our interview with Zach Weiss, super, super interesting. Walter Jenne, who does a lot of work on water, is interviewed by John Kempf in this YouTube video, which is very interesting, on the soil carbon sponge and how to cool the climate fast. Farmer's Footprint by Zach Bush is an interesting foundation. Also the website of Zach, who's a medical doctor, about this connection, healthy gut, microbiome, healthy produce, healthy soil. and obviously our website as well, where you can find a lot more. So if you have any feedback, let us know. Please send us a message, Twitter, comments below, reach out through the website. If you want to find out more, for instance, the interviews with Tony Lovell and Paul McMahon, who wrote the investment case for ecological farming, go to our website. And don't forget, think